Hey, how's it going? All right, this is the second video on the Martins with Uncle Phil.
Was talking about that. Dr. Phil, I think every parent can try to imagine the loss of a child, but to lose your child in this just unbelievable manner, and then we as lawyers try to ask them to do interviews and talk about it just to get simple justice.
That is the most stupid statement. I mean, if you think about it, the lawyers are trying to get the police to do their job. I mean, do you have any evidence there, Mr. Crump, or are you just trying to make statements against the police department that are unfounded? I would say unfounded statements, definitely, based on all the statements I've ever heard you say. It's pure ignorance.
To hold the killer accountable. As a father, is that tough for you to have people attacking your son, who's the victim here?
It's very tough.
I can imagine that, and a lot of the conversations we've had on YouTube is we've been discussing this, and the people that support George do say things about Trayvon that aren't loving. I mean, the truth is, according to the facts and the evidence we have, Trayvon, went back up towards the T to confront George. Apparently, whatever reason, he felt slighted. He felt that George was treating him poorly. He went back to ask him, why are you following me? What are you doing? What's up with this? So, that fact alone shows that he was on the confrontational attitude. He wanted to find out, but beyond that, he wanted to teach George a lesson just based on that statement. So when we say bad things about your son, we're not saying them in a negative sense. We're just saying that, hey, look, your son went and did this thing. We're not saying he's an evil boy. Kids his age do stuff like that sometimes. They step out of bounds. Sometimes they make a stupid mistake. And that's my personal opinion is he's an all right kid that just, got in with the wrong crowd, did some bad things here and there. Nothing that wouldn't have cleared out over time. He would have grown up and hopefully not become a prisoner. I mean, if you get in with the wrong crowd, you can end up in prison. But Tracy Martin and Sabrina definitely should understand how George feels and his supporters. You've got all these people slinging mud at George, saying all these evil and hateful things, and then they're getting upset because we are saying, well, look, George was the victim here. The fact that he shot Trayvon doesn't eliminate that fact. A lot of people get killed who are the attacker. A lot of attackers get killed. Does that mean they're a victim just because they got killed? People get killed in the process of doing crimes. There was no doubt about it that Trayvon was on top of George. So, a lot of people say, well, George could have started the thing and we just don't know. We don't have that evidence. Well, you know what? Too bad. Drop that. Unless you have the evidence, shut up about it. It doesn't matter. There is no evidence to that effect, and you're wasting your breath and you're wasting our time. We don't even want to talk about it. I don't want to hear any more about what might have been. When you get the evidence, bring it out. But right now, George is the victim until there's other evidence to prove otherwise. I mean, you can sit here and talk to your blue in the face telling me that George did this or you think George did that, but unless you got the evidence, I don't even want to hear it.
Knowing Trayvon himself, knowing the type of child he was, knowing the loving child he was, knowing the loving son that he was, knowing the outgoing person that he was.
Look, just like I said in previous videos, nice guys go off suddenly. Like the guy that ate off the face of the homeless man a month or so ago. Remember that guy that just ripped into the homeless man's face and ate it off? What a nice guy he was. Never would anybody have assumed he would do that. So maybe Trayvon got into some of that stuff that he got into or whatever. I don't know. People go off. But we do know that the only evidence we have is Trayvon is sitting on top of George pounding him. The only injuries that we can find are on George, other than the fist injury on Trayvon and the gunshot wound, which was the last step, which stopped the attack.
To sit back and listen to him, to people persecute him. It's almost as if Trayvon was the one with the gun. It's almost as if Trayvon shot George Zimmerman.
It doesn't matter who had the gun. It's like saying, well, my son was killed by this lady, and it's almost like he's the attacker when in reality she's the one that had the gun. Look, your son was committing a criminal act, and let's just say, for sake of argument, there's a lady that's being raped and a young man that's raping her. She reaches for her gun, she shoots him, kills him, he's dead. Okay? Who's the victim here? This is what you need to think, common sense. Who's the victim? The shooter or the shootee? Just because somebody gets shot, does that make them the victim? No. Do the cops shoot people that are not victims? Yes, people get shot all the time that aren't the victim. People that are attacking other people. That's why we believe in guns, so that people that are weaker or less able-bodied can defend themselves against these thugs.
That's not the case.
Grieving your son is a very introspective and retreative sort of thing. And you're being pushed and pulled. You're having to stand up and defend your son when your heart wants to go back and mourn his death and his passing. Those things clash, do they not?
Well, first of all, defending your son is a great thing. It's wonderful that you're doing that. But your son is dead. So, you don't need to defend him and protect him from the possibility of prison like George's dad is doing. George's dad is trying to keep his son from suffering, continuing to suffer. Trayvon is done suffering. He got no more suffering. So, I understand both sides of the picture because I'm a father. I know exactly how both of them feel, and I can feel for them. The problem is, I look at the facts and I say, if both of those kids were my son, I would have to side with George because George was the one getting beat up. If one of my sons ends up fighting with the other one and he's about ready to get killed by the other one, well, then, unfortunately, the one that's on top doing the most damage and attacking and refusing to stop, even though he's hearing the other guy begging for help, that's the guy that gets shot. That's the proper way. That's the fair thing. The fair thing, the honest thing, is that the bad guy, the guy that's on top beating the hell out of the other guy and refusing to get off, that's the guy that should get shot. Unfortunately, in reality, very seldomly does that happen. The guy on top wins, he goes off, and the cops just find a dead body, and there's thousands and thousands and thousands of dead bodies that have died in a similar manner because they didn't have a gun. So, let's continue.
It's very tough because we're standing up. We're standing up for what we believe in. And we believed in our son.
Everybody believes in their son. Everybody should stand up for their son. Even people that know their son was a bad guy will stand up for their son. That's the proper thing to do.
And we're trying to uphold his legacy, trying to prevent his name from being tarnished.
Well, that's a little bit late, and I think if I were the parents, the smart thing to do in the early days would have been to say, look, I don't know what happened. I can't tell you. I can't verify whether my son was attacked. And I would say no because he's a good kid and he didn't do that kind of stuff. But in the meantime, I don't want to tarnish George in his process of a fair trial either. So, if you want to be fair as a father, then you should be able to see both sides of it and say, I'm not going to sit here and tarnish George without the facts. But you didn't do that. I mean, Crump and all the rest of them brought these parents on and several channels, several TV shows, and talked about what a terrible guy he is and smearing him and tarnishing him. Look, I understand if it were my son, I'd be all upset too. But if you want to avoid us digging up every detail about your son, then you should drop this thing. You should just say, look, let the cops handle it. The cops went through. They did their process. They found George to be not guilty. The cops, the DA's office. I mean, it took Crump and all his people along with the president to stand up and force the hand of the state. to set up a special prosecutor, which is extra legal. It's beyond the legal scope of this case. The case should have ended when the DA's office said, "This is a stand your ground case. Thank you very much. Have a nice day." That should have been the end of it. And under our legal system, that is the proper channel. So the president stepped in and caused all this, the media. So all these people that stepped in and caused all this trouble should be held responsible. And I would include the president. I don't even like to call him that because, of course I don't believe that he is. But anyhow, let's continue.
Same time, we say to ourselves at night when the cameras go off, when the interviews are done, we have to go back into our dwelling and sit back and try to think, why him?
Do you believe that your son violently attacked George Zimmerman?
Not at all.
Of course you don't think that, but all the evidence proves that it's true. All the witnesses say that your son was on top of George. George's statements immediately after the fact absolutely confirm. The lie detector test that he took confirm all these facts. I know the parents disagree. I know the parents hate the thought that their son is going to be smeared. But you know what? When the son does something like this is what happens. It's unfortunate. And it's all over a 1 minute, 5-second decision. If Trayvon would have, after he punched him in the nose, I'm giving him that. Okay, you're following me? I'm punching you in the nose. Boom, now back off. End of the story. There would be no shooting. There would be no dead people here. The problem is Trayvon didn't stop there. He jumped on George. He tackled him, held him down on the ground and banged his head and beat him and threatened him and told him he was going to kill him. All these things under a lie detector test. So all you people keep saying he's a liar. He's a liar. He's a liar. Well, he must be an amazing liar because this guy can pass lie detector tests all day long. It's amazing.
Do you believe that your son violently attacked him?
No, I don't believe that. I believe that he was trying to protect himself.
Well, there she is. She just admitted it. Oh no, he didn't attack George, but he was defending himself. So what are you saying? You're saying that he was standing there, he felt threatened, and he attacked. Why lie about it? I understand as a parent how you feel, but when you lie and then you contradict yourself immediately after, it just makes you look stupid. It makes the whole argument for Trayvon look stupid.
He's not a violent person. It just hurts just to hear people say so many negative things about him, and he was the victim.
We have...
That's interesting. I wonder if she watches my videos or if they have heard any of my videos. But when she says he was the victim, this just rubs me raw. Really raw. How can she say Trayvon was the victim just because he got shot? Everybody that gets shot is not the victim. Everybody that gets killed in a battle between two people is not the victim. Sometimes, according to the facts, sometimes the good guy actually wins. Sometimes the good guy pulls out his gun and saves his life and stops the criminal from beating him senseless. That happens sometimes. And for people who are supposed to be level-headed and slightly educated to suggest that George, because he got out of his truck or because of there's about 30 arguments that they make that are all completely ridiculous. Everything to do with if this didn't happen, that wouldn't happen, etc., which absolutely has nothing to do with the law or this case. It's just they're wasting their breath and they're talking about stuff that they're going around in circles. As soon as you resolve this and you say, well, that's why this happened, then they'll say, yeah, but he shouldn't have done that. And then when you resolve that, then, oh, well, he shouldn't have done that. Yeah, I mean, it goes on and on. It's a never-ending circle.
A 17-year-old boy, which in my view is still a child.
Yeah, 17-year-old boy, still a child in my book. Well, I'll tell you what, Uncle Phil, why don't you get down on the concrete, lay down, and I'll get a 17-year-old, 160-pound 17-year-old, to sit on your chest. And we'll see what you think about the little boy and see what, just a little taste, see what it's like. In fact, I've got a 15-year-old right down the street here that is 160 pounds, and I can guarantee you he would knock the shine off of that head.
Unarmed in any way, walking to the store and back, and he gets shot and killed. I have a hard time with that. I have a real hard time with that.
Of course you got a hard time with that because you're psychotic when it comes to this stuff. You're anti-gun, and you're employed by people that are anti-gun. You have to say these things. You are paid to say these things. You've got a problem with a 17-year-old that's sitting on top of a 28-year-old, beating the hell out of him and threatening his life and trying to get his gun. You got a real problem that the 28-year-old finally saves his life and avoids the death, his own death. You've got a real problem with that, don't you? Well, if you got a problem with that, you got a problem. And it's an internal problem. It has nothing to do with reality or the facts of this case. It's just a problem. It's something that's deep down underneath that shiny scalp.
And the reason that we talk to the Ostermans is because they say they're Zimmerman's best friends. That's where they hid out for fear of retaliation after this happened. He spoke to them every day. Listen to what he had to say and why I had such a problem with it. You'll understand. Let me ask you this. Do you believe if he hadn't had that gun and shot Trayvon, that George Zimmerman would be dead today?
Absolutely.
So you think Trayvon would have killed him?
Absolutely. I think so.
And Uncle Phil has a problem with that. You know, that is why I have a problem with Uncle Phil. I really believe that he's, you know, there's two options. He's either a liberal, racist, anti-gun nut, which is a possibility, you know, because, you know, a lot of the people that are anti-gun are like that, and they hate any thought of it. But beyond that, he thinks George should have just laid down and died, you know. Look, I got out of my car. I deserve to die. This little tiny baby boy is banging my head and trying to get my gun. I should just let him have my gun. You know, I really stepped outside the boundaries. And I heard the policeman say, or the dispatcher say, we don't need you to do that. So at that point, you know, I should have just laid down on the concrete and waited for Trayvon to come and kill me, because that would have been the right thing to do, because, you know, I got out of my car. If I just wouldn't have got out of my car, this wouldn't have happened. If I wouldn't have got up that morning, this wouldn't have happened. If I went shopping on Saturdays instead of Sundays, this wouldn't have happened. If I would have left my house 1 minute later or earlier, this wouldn't have happened. So there are so many ifs and would have beens. It's so ridiculous to even make those statements. You know, it's just really stupid.
I'm trying to figure out, how do they believe that George Zimmerman would have gotten killed by Trayvon? Trayvon weighed 160 pounds.
160 pounds is light, as if 160 pounds is nothing. I don't understand why he would say that, as if that's you know, 160 pounds. Jeez, that's a lot of weight, especially when it's sitting on top of you, pounding you. And remember, and I've said this in other videos, he's got a lot more. Trayvon had a lot more length and a lot more young muscle, which is a lot stronger. Pound per pound, a young guy is a lot stronger than a heavy, overweight, older guy. No doubt about it.
George Zimmerman is an adult, 200 pounds. I just don't see how they feel that Zimmerman would have been dead.
Well, let me explain it to you, Tracy. His head was being crashed onto the concrete. All right? Is that making sense to you? His nose was broken, and it was all bloody. So his face was full of blood. His eyes were full of blood as he's laying on his back. He's being hit so hard that he feels like he's going to pass out with every blow. So, you know, please, if you really, really think that George was not in fear for his life, let me get my 15-year-old friend from down the street to come and bang on you for a little bit. We'll see what you think. I mean, you know, there's no doubt about it. Tracy's a big guy, he's a big man, and he could handle this 15-year-old. But if I let the 15-year-old knock him one big one right in the nose so hard that it knocks him down, and then get on top of him, because of course, remember, once you've got somebody knocked like that, you've got a total advantage. And then just wail on your face and bang your head on the concrete for a while. And then see how much you wish you had a gun.
If he wouldn't have gotten out the car, he was the neighborhood watch captain. If he saw what he believed was suspicious, his job was to call the police and let the police come and handle it.
See, this is what I'm talking about, and that's why I say Crump, I don't understand how he could be a lawyer or how he could possibly, I don't know how he got through school, because he keeps saying stupid things like, if he didn't get out of his car, what a stupid statement. And then they keep saying, well, the neighborhood watch program says not to carry a gun. The neighborhood watch program doesn't have the right to deny me my rights, my right to free speech, my Second Amendment rights, my Third Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Sixth, Seventh, Eighth, Ninth. What in the hell does Uncle Phil think when he says that we have to, if we join some private group, we have to give up all our rights? Does that mean that if I join the Boy Scouts, that from now on I'm not allowed to speak freely because the Boy Scout says, we don't want you to say this or that? I don't think so. I don't think so. Never do you give up your rights just because you join a private club. And if that private club insists you give up your rights to join, just ignore them. Just go ahead and do whatever you want to do and ignore them. And if they do finally come to you and insist that, you have to leave because you refuse to give up your civil rights, then leave. But in the meantime, tell them, kiss off. Kiss off. I'll carry my gun wherever the hell I want. The only place that I can't carry it is, where they've got metal detectors and they can catch it. Or in places like schoolyards where they make it such a heavy crime, most people won't take the chance.
What I had to say about these things, do you agree that this watch program and everyone that you would have any knowledge of always says, do not take a weapon on your watch?
They do say that, but because of the concealed weapons permit, he would legally be allowed to.
If he is behaving consistent with the spirit of the neighborhood watch program that he has signed up for, the bylaws say do not carry a weapon on a watch.
Don't you understand, Uncle Phil, what that means? It's a recommendation. I think we went over this in several videos. They recommend that you don't carry a gun. They can't. It's unconstitutional for a private group to tell me that I can't carry my gun. All right? You just can't do it. It's unconstitutional. So yeah, this is just they say, listen, if you're going to be on the neighborhood watch, we would prefer you don't carry your gun with you when you do that. But, Uncle Phil here, he's not going to bring out a document that George signed that said, I promise I'll never carry a gun. And even if he did find it, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't make a hill of beans. You can't sign away your rights. I mean, you can sign them away, but believe me, it doesn't mean jack. The paper that you signed is, you might as well use it to wipe your butt because it's worthless.
You're not legally allowed to carry that.
It doesn't say that. See, that's my point.
It doesn't say that, So what it says? What did I just tell you, Uncle Phil? Who cares? Who cares? Tell me what law George broke by carrying his gun. And prove to me that George would have been okay if he didn't have his gun. Prove it. If you can't prove it, then you're just full of shit.
The thing here is he was licensed to carry a weapon. You can be a kindergarten teacher and be licensed to carry a weapon. That doesn't mean you take it to your kindergarten class and put it on the desk.
I've heard this before, and we've had this discussion. Look, as I've said before, if I trust the kindergarten teacher to take care of my little Johnny, then I'm certainly not going to be concerned if she has a gun in her purse. All right? Because she could just as, I mean, if she planned on killing little Johnny or all the little kids in the, you could use a knife. You could take some poison and put it in their little treats. I mean, come on. It's ridiculous argument. And so the people that say the kindergarten teacher shouldn't have a gun is the same kind of attitude, the same point that he's making. Idiot. When my parents were growing up, they were going to school, and they had one teacher in the whole school, and the kids carried their own guns to school. And there never was a problem. The only reason we have a problem now, guns aren't the problem. It's the culture. We've changed our culture. We've gone from being a culture of helpful, nice people to becoming violent and criminal and hateful. And you see it all the time. All you got to do is watch the news. It's just full of it. Lift up a newspaper. Go back and look at the newspapers from the 60s and 70s and see what they talked about.
Pull it out and shoot someone. And the reason I'm talking about this is because at some point you have to give yourselves permission to say, I will not feel judged. I will not allow my boy's image in my mind or in the community's mind to be tainted by people trying to make sense out of nonsense. That's part of giving yourselves the right to disengage from the dialogue and say, I refuse to react and respond to people doing that. Because, listen, sometimes what we hear the loudest are those that have the least to say. They stand up and they talk the loudest, and the silent majority is not.
Man, that is the most amazing thing. I'm sitting here listening to him, and everything he's saying is pointing right back at his little shiny head. I mean, he's got the least to say, but he just keeps going on and on. I mean, it's amazing. He doesn't know anything about this case. Apparently, his job is to make people feel better about their situation, which is fine. Maybe he's making these people feel better. I don't know. But it's obvious that he's taken sides and that he doesn't care about the justice, the true justice. He doesn't care about digging through the evidence to find out exactly what happened. He's not concerned. I'm sure that his boss told him that this is the way it's going to be. But it seems like he's sure having a good time at it.
People in America, black, white, doesn't matter, understand and have compassion for your loss and caring. I will ask the studio audience, if you understand their pain, if you have compassion for their loss, stand up right now.
Yeah, do you think anybody's going to stay seated? Do you think anybody's going to sit there and go, I don't have any compassion for your pain? Come on. Even though Trayvon attacked George, we all have compassion for the parents. That's ridiculous. The only issue I even have with the parents is that they continued this thing. They know deep down that their son was a troublemaker. They know that he had been suspended 3 times in the last year. They know that during the time that he was there and got shot, he was on a suspension. They all know that. So deep down they know. They're obviously not dawdling parents. I mean, they weren't even there for his death. Where were they? And I don't want to be hard on them, but they need to lay off of George until this thing's over. Let the case play out, and when it's all done, if George gets put in jail, fine. But if George gets released, you need to go over there and apologize to him. As parents, you should go and say, I am sorry that we put you through all this. I am sorry that my son hurt you. In fact, I would think they would go to George's parents and say these things. Say, hey, listen, I'm a father. I understand. And I'm really sorry that my son did this. But I don't think that's going to happen. No matter what happens in this case, they're going to absolutely insist that there was racism involved and that George was seeking out Trayvon in order to kill him.
I want you to know, look around here. Look around. These people understand. These people understand where you are.
These people understand. These people understand where you are. You know what? These people all got hand-picked. All these people here were questioned. They all have, you got to go through a question process in some of these shows just to get in. Do you think that he would have wanted a single George supporter in that audience? I mean, one, just one. And we know that the truth is the population right now is about split down the middle. So you got half of them supporting Trayvon and half of them supporting George. And remember, out of those 100% of people, only about 10% of the people have a clue about the true evidence. So it's amazing that so many people support George, even with all this bad press and all this evil that they're pushing.
And you've got to give yourself permission for that. We're going to take a break. Coming up, George was a 28-year-old man. Trayvon was a teenage boy. Were they even a physical match? Now, I'm going to show Trayvon's parents what George Zimmerman's best friend had to say, and there's a reason I'm doing this. There comes a point when you have to say, I have no more unfinished business with you people. It's time to claim my right to mourn my son. We'll be right back.
And I'm going to drop it here, but I say, yeah, you've got the right to mourn your son, but you have to understand that your son was not the victim. And this is the problem that they have. Right now, you know, sure, go ahead and believe that your son is the victim. Go ahead and try to make yourself feel better. But, you're not doing, and Uncle Phil here is not doing them any favors at all, because they're never going to grow and get past this thing until they face the facts of what really happened that night. If Uncle Phil really wants to help them, he needs to help them move forward. Move forward. And the only way that they can get past this thing is to accept what really happened. So they need to know all the evidence. They need to know all the facts. If they really want help to move past this thing, they should contact me. I'd be more than happy to sit down with them and talk to them about the case, about the facts, and about how their feelings could be enhanced. They could actually grow from this thing once they realize what happened. I'm sure they could come to a conclusion that their son was a good kid, even after knowing all the facts. I mean, I've come to the conclusion. I don't believe that Trayvon was the devil. I don't believe that he was an evil kid. I just think that he made a bad decision at a spur of the moment, and it put himself in a really bad situation. Then he did it again when he saw George go down. He saw an opportunity to jump on him. That was his second and biggest mistake, because the first mistake, the punch, was bad enough. I mean, he could have got arrested. He could have gone to jail. He could be serving some time for that attack. But when he jumped on top of George and put George's life in danger, that's when he stepped way outside the boundaries. And if the parents could come to that understanding and say, listen, I love my son. My son's a good kid. He did a lot of good things. He just made a mistake. It was a small mistake. It was a minor mistake. But it was big enough that it cost him his life. And like I said in other videos, there's a lot of nice kids out there that, Trayvon's age, that are out driving around, and they decide to have a couple beers or something, and they end up getting in a crash and killing themselves and maybe several other people. Are they good kids? Are they bad kids? I don't say they're bad kids because they got in a crash, because they made the stupid mistake of drinking and driving. That doesn't make them a bad kid. It just means that they made a bad choice. And it's easy to make bad choices when you're young like that. It's easy. And that's why I say, and I could sit down with Trayvon's parents and share this information and show all the evidence I have and say, listen, I care for you guys. I care for your son. I'm sorry that he lost his life. But, if you want to grow past this thing, you're going to have to see it for what it is. And once you actually grasp that, you can relax a little bit. You can understand. And, of course, I would share with him my faith. I would say, listen, the fact that your son is dead doesn't mean that he's gone. I believe in a life after life. I believe that this life is a short period, that we're just preparing for the next life, that there is a much bigger and better life out there. And I certainly wouldn't deny Trayvon his second life or his opportunity to stand before God. So, like I said, I believe that if this guy, Uncle Phil, wants to help these people, he should be leading them to the truth, because that's what's going to set them free. Not trying to cover up all their feelings and make them feel like Trayvon was the victim and that he didn't do anything wrong. Because all that's going to do is build up anger within them, especially when George goes free. How do you think they're going to feel when George walks free? I mean, until they come to the reality that this was Trayvon's fault and not a terrible thing, it just happened. And if they could relieve themselves of that stress and focus on the son that they have now, and don't make those same mistakes. They were minor mistakes. I mean, a mistake like that, letting your kid go out after he's been suspended, that's a mistake. It's a minor mistake, but it's a mistake. And if they didn't do that, and that's why they keep saying, if he didn't get out of his car, this wouldn't have happened. Well, if Trayvon stayed home when he was suspended, this wouldn't have happened. And it's both equally the same. I mean, it's not illegal to let your kid go out after he's suspended. It's also not illegal to get out of your car. So, if we want to keep saying if this and if that, go ahead. But it can go both ways. So, I just want my listeners, or the people that listen to my videos, to understand that I don't hold anything against these people other than the fact that they're holding George responsible for defending his life. And until they get past that, they're going to grieve, and it's going to be a terrible process. And when George gets set free permanently, it's really going to be stressful for them. And Uncle Phil is not doing them any favors. It was good talking to you guys. I'll talk to you later. Bye.